It was a roller coaster day 3 for the Cincinnati Bengals, but an emphatic finish leaves a great impression for their overall draft class. Let's break down how the Bengals finished the 2026 draft.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. The Bengals wrapped up their draft class on day 3, and that is what we're covering today. I'm with James Rapien. I'm Jake Liscow. We're your host of Locked On Bengals, and boy, do we have a lot to talk about today, James. The Bengals go 4 straight picks on the offensive side of the ball. They trade back in the 4th round, which is actually a trade that I really liked when they made the move. They clean up with their 6th and 7th round picks and finish with some prospects that were significant fallers on consensus and really high on the old draft sheet, and players that you can see making the team and making an impact. But let's start at the top. We'll get to the way they finished in a few minutes here toward the end of the show and as we continue. But the Bengals start on day 3 in the 4th round with the trade back, where they move from one of their 6th round picks all the way up to the end of the 4th round to drop back 18 spots, which fair value on the trade charts or whatever. But to me, moving from the 6th round up into the 4th round, just eliminating that huge gap they had, really like the trade in a vacuum. They use those picks then on Connor Lew and Colbie Young, a wide receiver from Georgia and a center from Auburn. And different opinions on those 2 picks, James. And let's start with Connor Lew. I think here they've identified a player who, before the ACL injury, and he is coming off an ACL, was seen as center 1 in the class by many and has center of the future written all over.
For sure. Let's talk about the trade first, real quick, because I don't care about trade value, right? I didn't look at it once. They moved up 59 spots. 59 from 199 to 140. That felt like the Grand Canyon. It completely shifted. They already had 189. It just felt so different. And so I didn't even need to look at it. And this is how it ties to Lou. This is why I wanted to start with the trade. We know that at 110, the guys that they ended up targeting at 128, 140 were the guys they were targeting at 110. And so they do that, and they're able to secure both guys. This is the type of trade that you would ideally make. And boy, oh boy, the Jets, I don't know what you're thinking, but I will take advantage of it. If you want to take a flyer on a quarterback, that probably isn't going to matter much in Cade Klubnik, but the Bengals
love up too, just to make sure everybody knows I agree. I think I said it.
It made it day 3. Like it gave them this chance to do everything that we're about to talk about them doing, because I don't think they're able to do it. I think they would have a reach here or reach there, and then it just completely sets the tone for the rest of the day without that trade.
I think the move back of 18 picks only saw one of their targets, as far as we know, get picked in that time too. So the guys they were looking at, like you said, they got them later. And so I'm a fan of that. We'll talk about the wide receiver pick. Let's start with Connor Lew, James. Center of the future, do you think? I mean, really good chance of that. They take 2 interior offensive linemen, turns out. Brian Parker from Duke, the other one. But Connor Lew comes in first, and a center prospect who played center in college and has all the tools, I think, that you're looking for a developmental piece to eventually take over that starting job.
Yeah, it's nice because you get a center in the 4th round, in the middle of the 4th round, that probably goes 2 rounds sooner, potentially, if he's healthy, certainly a round sooner if he's healthy, and he's your backup. This isn't a guy you're drafting that you need him to start right away. You need him to plug and play. You needed a backup center, but one you believed in. And we know they didn't believe in Matt Lee. Whether or not we wanted them to believe in Matt Lee, it doesn't matter. They didn't believe in Matt Lee.
He also had some knee issues that may have been related, turns out. We'll have to find out a little bit more about that, but sounds like there was some knee stuff there.
And he had a knee at the end of the year. And so, yeah, it totally could be that. But for me, finding a guy like Lou, who was consensus, it's a value now at pick 128. It's already a value. You're like, all right, would have felt fine at 110. And so they take him at 128. He's not 21 yet. He's not celebrating draft night with a beer legally. Like, checkbox. Oh, he's coming off the ACL. Well, get the value because you have Ted Karras. Ted Karras is your starter. And so it just really fits. It fits everything you want. So, yeah, maybe center of the future, but you needed a backup center. And you're getting a guy that would have likely been drafted had he not gotten hurt in October, likely been drafted as a starting center for someone. And that doesn't have to be the case for you. So it's a luxury to do this, and it should fill that role. I asked him about potentially, he took all of his snaps at Auburn at center. I asked him about the guard flex. This is before they drafted Brian Parker. And he said, hey, I've taken reps at guard. I'd be happy to. We'll see if that's something that they would actually consider. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. The point is they were able to get a center that was certainly a need, certainly probably higher on the board than where they picked him, and someone that could end up being a really darn good player. They really believe in him as a pass protector, which is huge, obviously, for this team and what they are. And they've had a lot of, I don't want to say luck with Ted Karras, but he's been really, really durable. And so you needed a real backup center, someone you believed in. And so if they didn't believe in Matt Lee, they didn't over the past couple of years. They got lucky to a degree. Lucas Patrick no longer here. You needed to address it somehow. I wondered when they would. They get a guy with plenty of upside, and maybe he's your center of the future, like you mentioned, in Connor Lew.
Yeah, I think that some people coming into the day, I mean, we tried to set the stage for the offensive line pick to occur here, and there weren't great tackle options at this point. So it makes a lot of sense that they go to the interior at this point, and they go with a guy that ends up being, in my opinion, center of the future. We'll see how it plays out, obviously, but he has really good tape, and so exciting player there. Consensus 80, the Bengals get him at 128. Ooh. And like I said, but before the ACL injury, was seen as potentially the top center in the class, potentially a top 40, 50 player in the class. And so great value there. You mentioned the age. This is one of the younger picks for the Bengals in the entire class, just looking at all of their picks, which I was just looking at. And here we are. He is the youngest pick in the class at younger than 21. The second youngest, Tacario Davis, turns 22 relatively soon. Jack Endries, who we'll talk about a little bit later in the 7th round, just turned 22. Brian Parker relatively recently turned 22. Connor Lew, not yet 21. So a lot of development still to go for him, but you mentioned the pass protection chops for Lew. That is probably the strength of his game. If you were to pick a weakness, it's literally strength. It's the ability to displace men vertically. He doesn't play with necessarily the kind of power that some teams might want, but in terms of like an athletic center, that is something the Bengals haven't had. The high-end athlete. I think he is a high-end athlete. We, of course, didn't get to see him test, but that was one of the themes of the class. When we talk about themes of the class, athleticism will be one of them. Excited to see how Connor Lew develops. And he did mention that he is ahead of schedule, right? If anything, with the ACL rehab, when you guys talk to him, and everything's going well with that rehab, should be good to go for training camp, he hopes. Zach Taylor, of course, will take a cautious approach here, and they'll bring him along as slowly as he needs to, but excited to see how Connor Lew lands. And the depth of this offensive line, just like we talked about the defensive line, suddenly feels so much better than it did 24 hours ago.
It does. It does. I really like what they did with the two linemen. I mean, and they're a package deal because now you can take it slow. Brian Parker, he's used to snapping in Cincinnati because he did it for years and years at St. X before he went to Duke, right? And we'll dive into him more. But a lot of our everydayers probably know that already. And so you have the Lew insurance to a degree, and a guy that's really going to help. So like the tandem makes a lot of sense when you look at the room now and you see Lew and you see Parker and you see Jalen Rivers. Like you just see these guys, obviously Fairchild, these young guys that can be developed, that you're given to the Bengals offensive line coach, Scott Peters, and it fits. It makes sense. It makes sense behind a lot of these veterans that they're banking on. But
got the wrestling background too.
Wrestling.
Yeah. I mean, Scott Peters and wrestlers. That's match made in heaven right there, right?
It is. And St. X is a heck of a wrestling school, by the way. I know that. I don't know where Lew went, but yeah, it's the point. So up next though, we got to dive into the wide receiver. We got to talk about Colbie Young because he's next. The Bengals ace the trade. Connor Lew, heck of a pick. And then they go off the board a little bit. And Jake was worried. I know a lot of you are worried. A lot of you look at this and say, what the hell is going on? Let's try to make sense of it. We will, coming up next.
The NFL draft is over, but where preparation meets opportunity and every decision matters, that's still going on for the Cincinnati Bengals. That could still be going on for you. It's all about being ready when your moment comes, and that mindset applies all over the place. That's where Rugiet comes in. Rugiet offers treatments designed to help you feel ready and confident when it matters most. Their top option, Rugiet Ready, is a mint that dissolves under your tongue with clinically proven ingredients and works quickly in about 15 minutes most of the time and can last up to 36 hours. They've also got Go Long, designed to help with performance and control. It's about showing up at your best whenever your moment is, whether it's in the first round or if you're Mr. Irrelevant. So head to Rugiet.com/LockedOnNFL. Get 15% off your ED treatment. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNFL for 15% off. Rugiet, performance medicine for men.
All right. Leave it to me to talk wide receiver. We didn't talk a lot about wide receiver. We said they would target receiver, but it's not like we spent a lot of time on receiver. In this draft process was weird for everybody because we're focused on 10, and now 10 doesn't exist, and now we're looking ahead, and it was really hard to look ahead because you just didn't know exactly what they were going to target because usually you can kind of base it on the first round pick and then go from there, and it was a unique draft process. So when we found out Colbie Young was a target, and then eventually becomes a Bengal. How much had you done on Colbie Young, Jake? Like, it's not like we had talked a lot about him. My first thought about this was, and I text you this, was, well, this is like the Tacario Davis pick at corner because he's 6'4", 218. Tacario Davis is not 218, but for a receiver, like a big receiver, strong receiver, fast for his size. And in the Bengals, clearly just value that. Like they that's clearly what they were targeting. Like there were at pick 110 before they traded down, Skylar Bell was there. I don't think he was in real consideration. Like there were other guys there that we have mentioned, that we have talked about and thought about. And I know I would have been in on Skylar Bell at that point. They weren't. They wanted a big physical presence. And so they take the swing on Colbie Young, even though he didn't have a ton of production. There's some off the field stuff that we'll dive into. Like there's layers to this, but they take the swing on Colbie Young with the last pick of the 4th round.
Yeah, I think some of the guys that we did talk about at receiver went a little bit earlier. Jacoby Lane, who is consensus 114, goes 80 to the Baltimore Ravens. Chris Bell, you talked about, he goes 94 to the Miami Dolphins. He was consensus 54. Brennan Thompson, another guy we talked about with the speed, consensus 108, goes 105. And so after that, Elijah Surratt at 115, Caden Wetjen, a returner out of Iowa, who's technically a wide receiver, goes to Pittsburgh at 121. They went way off the board for that one too. Skylar Bell.
That would have been bad. Yeah.
Yeah. Skylar Bell at 125. Colbie Young is a player that, we hadn't done work on him. He's I liked, it's kind of mean, I guess. Maybe I shouldn't say this about him the day they drafted him, but Timu Higgins, he's got some T Higgins to his game, but he's not T Higgins, obviously. But in terms of size and style, vertical route tree stuff on the field, he brings that element, right? The issue is didn't stay on the field a whole lot for different reasons. He had injury issues, and he had a pretty significant off-field issue that involved criminal charges for assault and battery of an unborn child with his ex-girlfriend. And those charges were later reduced, and he pled out. And the ex-girlfriend, who is not named in the lawsuit, ended up recanting the allegation. So a whole lot going on there. He missed 9 games as a result, I think, before Georgia reinstated him. The Beast and Dane Brugler, who does more background work on these guys than anyone outside of the NFL, actually had glowing remarks for Colbie Young from a football character perspective, both from his teammates and his coaches. He worked his way back after breaking his leg and got back for their bowl game. And so Zachariah Branch noticed that, his teammate at Georgia. So it is a reach by consensus, by production. He was 223 by consensus. The Bengals pick him at 140. So the Bengals are here taking a risk, and they took 2 risks in the 4th round, if we're being realistic, because Connor Lew, as much as we love the pick, is coming off an ACL. Colbie
Sure.
Young, a whole bunch of other issues in terms of staying on the field and producing at a high level in college, and the off-field issues for him that are rightly going to draw scrutiny from Bengals fans who have watched this team draft Joe Mixon and draft Jermaine Burton, and the comparisons to both of those guys were happening in social media. And I understand why. Hopefully, he continues to go in the right direction off the field and can realize some of his talents on the field. On the field, he does have the ability, I think, to compete for that wide receiver 3 job and bring a different skill set than the Bengals have anywhere outside of T. Higgins. He's got, like you said, the Tacario Davis comp, the height, weight, speed combination, and the ability to win in contested catch situations. So, like, the football fit with Joe Burrow, back shoulders, high pointing, and winning in contested catch situations with a guy that can place the ball like Joe Burrow can. Like, you can see the vision there, but it is still a big risk, I think, at this point in the draft.
Yeah. You know what? Instead of, because I get the Timu Higgins and you could go that route. What if it's like, I'm trying to think of a funny way to say it, but fast Auden Tate?
Yeah.
Like, like not runs a 5 flat Auden Tate. Like maybe that's more realistic, where it's a big bodied guy, can be physical, but actually can run and doesn't move like Ray Maluga at the end of his career,
I think he also had some plus notes for his blocking. And so they could use that at receiver too in a pretty big way.
And he did some special team stuff as well. And so, look, they're rolling the dice here, but by saying, hey, we think that this guy, his physical traits, we met with him, we believe it. And they're aware of the Jermaine Burton thing. Like, no one is more aware of the failure than the people in this building. I promise you.
Do you think Zach was always coming down for that post 4th round presser? Do you think it was after they ended up picking Colbie Young, they decided he was going to come with Dan Pitcher?
That.
Yeah.
I'm pretty certain that was the case, is because they picked Colbie Young because of what comes with that. And I'll just use Zach I'll speak for Zach here. And I shouldn't, he would never speak for anyone, right? He always says that, but I will. I know for a fact how much of a headache it was, like with Jermaine. And obviously the hitting the chair when they drafted him, and then how much of a meme that is just a few months later, because it just all falls apart and it's chaos. So, like, if you've just gone through that, you should know how to vet this out. And maybe it's because you could say, all right, well, he had the injury, the off the field issue was a major issue that has been resolved, and he hasn't had anything else. And I'm not defending him, but I wonder if, like, that's how they're viewing it. And then the football character is also high, because I think that's what they ignored with Jermaine. I don't think there was anyone saying the football character with Jermaine was high. And so, like, I have no idea. Like, I don't think he impressed them at the combine. Like, and I'm not trying to make this a Jermaine thing, but maybe Colbie Young impressed them at every stop outside of that major thing that he had to deal with and put himself in, and that he shouldn't have done. And that's much different than them overlooking during the process the stuff that they were hearing and seeing about Jermaine.
Yeah.
And they were like, yeah, but,
Let me read what Dane wrote in The Beast about him, because it is interesting, right? Because the off-field thing is serious, and I'm not trying to minimize it at all, but, like, they're two parts of the character thing, right?
And we need to give the information. Like, we're not right. We just, every day should know what we know. Yeah.
Just trying to relay information here, right? And I've talked about the risk. I don't love taking a player with this in his background, period. What Dane wrote about the character feedback, strong character feedback from scouts and coaches. An NFL scout said he likes to be coached. He's a student of the game. He's reserved but polite. He'll fit in any locker room. And instead of preserving himself for the draft after that 2025 broken leg, he broke his left fibula, had a torn ligament, needed surgery. He only missed 6 games and rehabbed hard to get back for the college football playoff. His teammate Zachariah Branch said sometimes people get injured and disappear, but he was nothing like that. So in those senses, that stuff is going to matter to NFL teams as well. They're going to vet the off-field stuff, but the on-field and locker room and coachability, character marks, those things definitely matter to them as well. So in that way, to me, it's more similar to Mixon a little bit than Jermaine Burton in terms of there being a clear off-field incident that occurred,
Yeah.
and the lack of like football character issues from Mixon as a prospect.
Yeah. The difference is obviously talent production,
Right. Of course.
all age, like, but it's also the end of the fourth round. We'll see. Look, we'll see. He's going to have to prove it. He's going to have to earn it. I think he knows that. We talked to him on a conference call. I think he's very aware of that. And so we'll see. It's you got to build that equity, and we'll see if he can do that. But there are 1, 2, 3 guys, and we've mentioned 2 of them on the pod a bunch. One, I don't know if we've really mentioned a ton, but great value. Great value is what the Bengals got with their final 3 picks, round 6 and their 2 7th-rounders. We will dive into all 3 coming up next. Today's show is brought to you by Indeed. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is sitting open. When the pressure's on, you need the right hire. This is the time to lean on Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people that actually fit what you're looking for. Skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping and wishing that the right candidate stumbles across your post. Here's a stat that says it all. In the past minute we've been talking, well, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching, more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. All you have to do right now is go to Indeed.com/podcast. That's it. And right now, because you're listening to Locked On Bengals, you'll get $75 in sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves. Spend less time searching, more time actually interviewing candidates that check all your boxes. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about us on Indeed. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? That's a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs.
3 picks in round 6 and 7 after the Bengals moved from one of their 6th-round picks up to the end of the 4th round to pick Colbie Young, Brian Parker, Jack Endries, Landon Robinson, the 3 picks. Landon Robinson, we talked about a ton as early as the 4th round, maybe in a trade back scenario where they picked up a 5th-round pick, and the Bengals get him all the way in the 7th round at 226. Brian Parker, we started talking about probably around where they picked Connor Lew, maybe a little bit earlier, but probably around where the Bengals picked Connor Lew. He was the top available player on the sheet, the draft sheet that we've talked about this week with Joe Goodberry, of course. If you're following closely, you've seen us reference it a ton. He was 29th on the overall board on the sheet. So after they took some swings and took some risks in the 4th round in different ways, and we've talked about those picks a lot here today, they opened up the sheet, James, and they looked at the top of that sheet and drafted Brian Parker and drafted Jack Endries in the 7th round and drafted Landon Robinson in the 7th round. I mean, 3 straight picks that have a great shot at being NFL contributors based on everything we've been tracking for years and putting together these player profiles.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Like, first, I'm going to start with the quote of the draft. We probably should have led the show with it, but it's one of those things, man, when a guy like Jack Endries, who was expecting to go round 4, like, I'm sure he was Dane Brugler's 11th tight end. So I'm sure NFL teams might have said, hey, you may go round 3, especially with the way we saw some tight ends fly off the board yesterday. Like,
weird tight end draft. I'll say that.
No doubt.
Yeah.
And so instead of the 4th or 5th round where he was projected or going earlier, he goes in the 7th. He goes pick 180, or not 180. Sorry. Goes in the 7th, pick 221. And I asked him like what that process was like. And he was emotional at the beginning of the call. And I'll tweet out the call if you're listening to this. I'll tweet it out once we get it posted. But he said, quote, like got his emotion together. And so then I asked about the fall, and he said, I'm going to make every team that didn't bleeping draft me pay. And I just love that. I love that they're getting these guys that are high in talent, probably should have went sooner. It's a weird draft, odd draft. In all 3, you could see them being contributors to the Bengals in their 6th and 7th round picks.
Yeah. Endries, I talked to Max Toscano. We did the tight end episode with Max as the first deep dive as we were looking at positional targets for each day of the draft. And I don't know if we talked about Endries in that episode. I mean, he
Yeah.
goes very
I
late
don't
here.
remember talking about him much at all.
On June 17th, Max said that Texas's Jack Endries has a little Sam Laporta to him. He's got to continue to emphasize technique in line to make up for that in terms of being an off-ball guy, but there's a path to being an every down tight end. He said today after the Bengals picked him, Tanner McLaughlin, if he were good, which poor Tanner McLaughlin catching one there. But
Tanner McLaughlin, if he were good.
he got up to 245. He played in line a ton at Texas. After at Cal, he was playing outside, not attached quite a bit, and was very productive as a receiver, and has a path to being an every down tight end in the NFL. Is that do-it-all mold who can play in line, might need to get a little bit stronger, but really excited about his potential as a do multiple things kind of tight end who has experience playing plenty in the slot, plenty in line as well. He went from 38% in line at Cal in 2024 to playing 65% of his snaps in line for Texas in 2025 last year. So a big change for him, being more of an inline tight end, getting a lot of experience doing that. Also tested well, continuing the theme of the Bengals drafting green RAS numbers for every single pick, except Connor Lew, who didn't test, but I think he's a very athletic player who would have tested really well. So I was pretty happy to see Endries here as a player who absolutely can contend to make the roster and be game day active as a 7th round pick.
Yeah. Well, that's all you can ask for. Like, you could tell me, let's just play the game. Could Brian Parker be your 8th lineman week 1? Yeah, he could. He really could. And he's someone that if you would have picked him 2 rounds earlier, been like, man, I feel pretty good about this guy because he can do a little bit of everything. And so I referenced it earlier. He played center in high school, took all of his snaps at tackle in college, left tackle, right tackle. Obviously, he played center, so they're going to look at him from a body type. And during this NFL process and pre-draft process, they looked at him at guard. 309 pounds without looking. I'm pretty sure that's what he is. Like, I would imagine that's their view. I asked Zach about it. He said he could play all 5. I assume the Bengals are going to view him as an inside guy mostly, but maybe not. Maybe they try him. I would love, if I'm an NFL team, I would love to have an 8th lineman that can do everything.
Yeah.
That is about as valuable, like get you through a game, active. If there's an injury, he needs to go in, he can do whatever you need him to do.
And maybe he's even your 7th lineman, depending on how things shake out. I think Cody Ford is going to be really challenged here, is the point that I'm trying to make with the addition of Connor Lew and Brian Parker and the pay cut that Cody Ford took. I think that speaks to a real battle there that is brewing. I see Parker more of like a tackle in a pinch and primarily the interior, but he's played a lot of tackle. So he's at least done it a bunch on both sides at Duke.
And that's it. And I wonder, and I assume that's what the Bengals will view it as, but that's really valuable to have. And that was one of my takeaways in the media room. I'm like, Cody Ford is on notice. Like, Cody Ford is very much on notice now, and I get it. And it is also, again, it's Connor Lew insurance. If that knee doesn't get where it needs to be by the time, well, you got a guy in Brian Parker who can be your backup center. And that's the beauty of doing this. That's the beauty of the waves of pass rush. You want waves of offensive line. You do. You want to have guys. You don't want to see the waves. Yeah, you want to keep one wave.
Yeah.
You don't want to rotate, but you don't want the world to end if one guy goes down.
Yeah, for sure.
And that it's that simple. You want to be, okay, well, fine. Well, we'll get this. Yeah, actually, you want to have multiple surfboards that can ride the waves. How about that? We'll keep that analogy. There you go.
I was thinking about like phalanx battle formations and the way that you would have guys come in to relieve the tired shield bearers in ancient combat. Anyway, we don't need to go too far down that path here.
But I really like them. And it's not the Cincinnati native thing. It's the, oh my God, he's really versatile and going to be good and has impressed everywhere he's went. Good. Yeah. Like that's just a heck of a pick. It's a heck of a pick. And then the last, I mean, and we're going to talk about these guys plenty more, of course, but it had to be, it felt destined. The only pre-draft interview I've ever done, I don't even think I told you I did it, and I saw you saw it, but on Thursday, the only pre-draft interview I've ever done with a player ever happened on Thursday morning. I talked with Landon Robinson, and he was out there doing these interviews, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to DM him and see if, and we worked it out Thursday of the draft, and I'm like, it's worth, let's do it. Let's talk. Even though he could be, even after the Dexter Lawrence trade, let's talk. And he ends up becoming a Bengal because it just felt like he was going to be a Bengal. And I love this pick because I think that, you want to talk about challenge? I think second round pick Chris Jenkins from a few years ago could be challenged by Landon Robinson. I do think that. I think that there's a chance that happens.
I'm excited they took a chance on this body type again. The shorter, he's under 6 feet tall, 293.
It's 5'11".
I'm excited that they took a chance on this body type again. They haven't gone smaller at defensive tackle since Geno Atkins, really. They've had some tweeners that have played multiple positions and they've moved into defensive tackle. So they've done that sort of thing before. And I guess that's kind of the case here, but yeah, excited to see where Landon Robinson fits in. We were looking at him as early as the 6th round. The Bengals get him with their 7th round pick. One of the guys that we did talk about in our mocks, I think we also talked about Brian Parker as a target as early as 110. I'm just looking back at our notes from our mock draft episode. And so at least we got a couple of those guys. And the biggest surprises to me, James, and we'll get into this a little bit more another day. We'll get into grades and all those things, surprises, trends, themes, all that good stuff as we have time to digest and look back on this class on the whole. No running back. They don't end up picking a quarterback. They don't end up adding any picks, although I'm sure they tried at different points in the draft. No slot corner. Those are, and no linebacker, of course.
No linebacker.
And one of the first priority free agents or college free agents that they signed was is his name Jack Dingle, the linebacker
from UC.
Linebacker.
They can't draft Bearcats, but they can sign them to free agent deals.
Look, we'll take one. Hopefully they sign another Jeff Caldwell maybe to a little camp deal to see if he can come in and work out. Because Cyrus, where did he go? To Baltimore?
Cyrus Allen was drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs.
Oh, the Chiefs. I knew it was a Bengals rival. I couldn't remember which one.
Yeah. So, look, I love what they did. The last 3 picks are just crazy good. And really, I see the logic with Young. We'll talk more about it. I want to think more about it. The Connor Lew makes a ton of sense. Takario Davis, I see the logic. Cassius Howe, I love. Day later, still love it. I still love. I love every. Met him today. Got to talk with him today. It certainly has a personality, and I want a personality. I want some dog in your edge rushers that are a little undersized, especially, but bring juice. They needed some juice.
They needed juice. They got a bunch of juice. All these guys are athletes. Another undrafted free agent. I was just looking as we're wrapping up here.
Yeah,
Kentucky tight end Josh Caddis, who Joe Goodberry knows is a 74th percentile run blocker. So they got their perhaps more do-it-all pass-catching themed tight end with Endries and Caddis. Add him to the stable of guys that maybe are going to be blockers and in that Drew Sample kind of mold for this team as an undrafted free agent. We'll keep an eye on the undrafted free agents, of course. Those won't become official until they can take physicals, I think. So those will be a little bit of time before they become official, and we'll be back probably Monday, right? That's usually what we do.
Yeah,
so we'll be back Monday with themes. We'll get into grades, and we'll have had some more time to process what the Bengals have done with this draft class. We'll see if they make a move for a veteran linebacker on Monday or a veteran slot corner on Monday, or if they rock with what they got at those positions. But until then, that's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Until next time, thanks for listening. Hoo day, and have a good one.